Sports Radio.
To this week's edition of the Leadership Blend with your host Ricardo D. Rice and my correspondent
Chris Wyatt.
All right, so it's just the boys' day today. So we have the girls are on hiatus and one is
we gotta hold it down. We'll hold it down.
It's one of those things we have females and they have things they have to do or get done. But it's all good because like I told people, there's an internship program here at IBNX. So I'm looking at about 9 young, fresh, eager people who are wanting to do everything from content writing to being on-air personalities. So it wasn't a problem. So you may hear another voice today. It'll be Miss Sophie. She's going to be in here feeding me information because I was trying to get a lot of stuff done.
Kudos to Sophie. Welcome.
I know I tried to throw her on the spot, but I wasn't going to. I was going to be nice to her. So I'm not going to throw her on the spot today because we do have a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend. Some stories we're actually going to have to revisit because we found out there was some other information to it. So we're going to jump right into it. So last week we had the discussion. We had Erica Wright here from You First, who was amazing, who does the feeding the homeless and putting together bags and all that good stuff for the homeless. Shouts out to Erica Wright. Thank her for being on the show.
Yes,
she was
big
amazing.
Heart. She has a huge heart.
She's amazing. And we discussed the case before the court with the baker, Jack Phillips, and his bakery or cake shop, Masterpiece Cake Shop, and his turning away a same-sex couple who were trying to get him to make a wedding cake. And what happened was they made the decision in Colorado in their court system, and then it ended up going to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court voted on it, and they voted in his favor. But then the Supreme Court came back around and was like, yeah, we need you guys to rethink this, look at it again. So I didn't want to say that they overturned their decision because that's not the verbiage that was used, but they had them relook at the case. So what we found out over the weekend was there was actually a precedent from a case that happened in 2013, which was a floral person named Bartonell Stutzman, and her shop, Arlene Flowers, and she turned away a same-sex couple who wanted to give a floral arrangement for, I'm assuming, their civil union. So yeah, apparently that was the precedent. So now I'm thinking that that's what laid the case, or laid the foundation for it. But then you start getting into time periods. So you're talking about 2013 versus 2018, and actually. Well, we're dealing with it in 2018, but I think this case with Jack was actually 2016-ish. I don't think it was 2018, but we're still dealing with it in 2018. So you're talking about a span of, 5 years? So this shows you how fast things can happen because in those 5 years, now they tried this case. The Supreme Court went in his favor, but now they're asking them to relook at it because they're like, yeah, we need to look at other variables. So remember, you get into a lot of other variables when you make this kind of decision on a case like this because you start getting into infringing upon people's civil rights. You start getting into the rights of a business owner to refute or to turn away the kind of clientele they prefer they want to have. So the question becomes, how much is too much? How much is too much leeway to give a business to say, yeah, you can turn these kind of people away based on your beliefs? Because remember, at the premise, you get into religious beliefs, which everybody knows can become very murky because sometimes religion can be a little discriminatory for all intents and purposes. So in the case of Jack, his case was, or his premise was, well, I don't do things that go against my religion. So he had not done a Halloween cake because it went against his religion because most Christians don't believe in Halloween. Just to name one of the examples. So how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts, Chris?
Well, we did visit this, and as I said before, it's one of those very gray areas that, on both sides you see that people have some strong points. You're going against old mores and old decisions. And so this is just showing us that we're in a new time, and that with the fact that we do have social media and we have so many people that are a little more up on what's happening around the country and around the world, that some of these decisions that were made and could be made on a state level or local levels, now everybody knows about it, and it seems like they have to really look at so many things on making the decision. It's just not, you just can't look at your region or your state. You have to look across the board and see if things are changing in the culture. And it seems like culture is changing, and some of these decisions are being made with some of the people that own the courts that have had some old ways of thinking. But at the same time, we're in a new time, and I think we have a more knowledgeable country because of all of the social media than we had in previous generations. So I think that they have to revisit this, because it's kind of something of the times that the old and the new. I think that's where we're at. Is that you just got to look at what the culture is today, because there's so many things that are going different than it did, 2 generations ago. And so that's why I think they have to revisit it and make sure that they're not just looking at old standards, but looking at where we're at today in America, and how we can do things that don't infringe on people's rights.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, it gets really murky, because you have to remember, the wording in legislature has to be designed to protect certain classes of people, particularly, here we go with minorities. So this case is important to us because if done wrong, it can give business owners the right to refuse certain classes of people. Let's think about it. So I'm a server sometimes at my part-time job. The stigma on black folks is we don't tend to tip. Is it true? As somebody who served for quite a while, it does tend to be true. It's not all black folks, but it's just not something I don't think as a culture we were groomed to consider. So you go out to eat, and when I started serving, I thought about my parents, because my dad would take us out to eat all the time, and I was like, well, we used to go out to eat all the time. I wonder if Daddy left the servers a tip. So I watched him when we went out. I love you, Daddy, but I'm going to put you on blast. So I watched him when we went out to eat, and I was like, okay, so we get to the end, and everybody in my family knows I serve. So everybody looks at me when it's time to leave a tip, because they know I'll go hard for a server, especially if the server is good. So I'm like, I wonder if my daddy typically tips. So when we got to the tip part, he didn't really, I mean, of course the bill was high, because my daddy pays for the whole family. So the bill was already kind of high. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to see what he's going to do.
Tell me when you're going out again. I'm going to include myself, since he's paying.
Yeah,
since Daddy's paying, I'm coming.
Daddy kind of pays for everything. He's
right
a
there.
good father. Shouts out to my dad, Richard Rice. But I was like, I wonder how he views a tip. So when it came time to pay, he paid the bill, and when it came to the tip part, he was kind of like, okay. It wasn't something he thought about. So I was like, okay, Daddy, you can't leave the server like $5 on a $200 check. We're not doing that. He's like, well, you leave the tip. Then fine, I will leave the tip, because we're not doing that. We're not going to be that stereotypical class of people that does not tip. So I said that to say, when you start giving business owners too much leeway, then you start getting into the possibilities of possible discrimination, because what happens is they'll start hiding behind the new legislation. And they'll go, well, I have the right to refuse whoever I want to. And then the premise becomes, because I don't believe in serving African Americans. Right. It may not be a Christian belief, but it would be their religious belief. And nobody would make them prove it. So it becomes, okay, well, the Grant's Deli does not serve African Americans. Well, that's discrimination. Yeah, but the legislation says it's a religious belief, and they, because lawyers will cite a case to make their case. So they will say, well, in Phillips versus whatever the same-sex couple name was, they decided that the business owner was right. So this is our Christian belief. We don't believe that African Americans should be served in this restaurant environment, so we're not doing it as business owners. And that's our Christian belief, or that's our belief. It may not be Christian, but that's our religious belief. and then because the way the new legislation would have been written, they would be validated. So it opens the floodgates to being able to discriminate against certain classes of people. So it's important that we, and I'll say we because I'm a minority, it's important that we follow these kinds of cases to see what the outcome is, because at the end of the day, that outcome is probably going to affect us because we're a minority. So it's important that we follow these kind of cases. It's the same thing when we were talking about immigration and, people being put in cages and things of that magnitude. I think people forget that slavery was not that long ago. You're not talking about 2,000 years like dinosaurs.
Right.
You're talking about, about 50 years, something along those lines, that we were considered 1/10 of a person. And yes, the legislation was literally written like that. I meant to look it up. But the law was actually...
Segregation in schools.
Yeah,
Yes,
all this stuff
that.
was written. I could not believe that it was written that way, that it was written that we are like 1/10 of a person. They had it down to a science. It was amazing to me that they had it down to a science. So it was like, if this person is 0.5 this and 0.5 that, then it was amazing that you could calculate the level of humanity of an individual. And slavery was 179 years ago. So you're still not talking about an exceptionally long time, because we're still fighting that battle. So when this kind of stuff comes up, it's important that we be mindful, especially minorities, of what the courts say, because at the end of the day, it will affect us. So yeah.
Well, the state Supreme Court, it in their decision on the Orleans Flowers case, they said that their decision concluded that this constitutes sexual orientation discrimination. So again, and we've talked about this previously, where I believe once you go and get a license for business, which means you're doing something that's a public thing. This is not like a chartered business. This is not a club member business. You're doing a public business. I think you have to do things that can be done according to spec of what your customer is asking you to do, that is not illegal, as far as you did something that's going to be lewd, if you're not in the business of like some type of adult business that says you do adult items or something like that. But if it's just whatever they're asking you to do and it's not against like something that's a illegal violation of the common law of your area, of where you're living, based on your state laws or county laws, then I see that you should have to honor what the consumer is asking you to do, or you would have to reevaluate what type of business you want to be in. Do you want to be in a business that just caters to you do personal business with people? You set up personal contracts, and then you find out exactly what they want, and if they don't do what you want within the contract of what you're looking for, you just don't do the business with them. But if you're an open business, a public business, I believe unless you find a way to change the way you're doing business with the public to something that's private, I think you have to honor what the consumer wants and what the customer wants.
So then I guess we get back into how much rights should a business have? Even outside of turning away business, both of these owners, Jack and Bartonelle, because Bartonelle's actually, I think, 72. So she's been in business for a very long time. So I guess
Barronelle, I think it's Barronelle Stutzman.
Yeah, so she's like 72. So she's been in business for, I think, at least 20 years. So we're not talking about some new business owner. And I don't think Jack is that young either. So you were talking about people who've been in business for a hot minute. So I guess my question becomes, what other groups have they turned away?
What this takes me back to, Ricardo, when back in probably the 60s, right? When the hippie era, when people were coming in, they're walking in bare feet and they got their hair long compared to the 50s. And I bet you they had the same kind of situation where they're saying, hey, you guys can't come in here. And it's just a group of, free-spirited people. They're not really there to cause no harm or anything, but they are different. They're different. They're coming in maybe barefoot. They're coming in, their hair, way down their back or something like that, compared to the generation before them, shortcuts and all that kind of stuff. And so the business is looking at them saying, no, we don't want you up in here. And so when you start having that again is discrimination unless you have your business set up so you personally get to pick who you do business with. I mean, people can do that in private contracts. I mean, I can pick and choose whose lawn I'm cutting. I mean, you can't force me to cut your lawn, but I can set up my contract, and if it's not to my liking, then I don't do business. But once I'm a public business, if I have a storefront and I say lawn cutting business, I can't say no, but not to you, and you didn't ask me anything to personally put me in a spot that makes me illegally doing something.
Which I guess that takes you back into when restaurants and clubs and things of that magnitude, which I'm starting to see less of, where they had the dress code. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you can't come in here with no shirt on. You can't come in here with no shoes on. There was a small movement a couple of years ago where clubs were trying to change the scale of their clientele. So I think Club 112, which I don't even know if that thing is still open because, I don't even know if that club is still open. But I think 112 was one of the ones that they were like, okay, but you have to be semi-dressed to come into this club. And I know that clubs that started doing that a couple of years ago. It was like, okay, well, we want to change the kind of clientele we're getting. So, businesses start scrambling for ways to, it's not so much discriminate, but find a loophole to kind of change the landscape of the clientele they have. So with clubs a couple of years ago, it was okay, well, you have to be semi-dressed, or, you can't have sneakers on, or you can't wear jeans, to try to change the landscape of their clientele. I don't think it really worked because it's nightlife. So I don't want to come hang out in the club with my khakis and my dress shoes on. So I don't think it really worked, but there was a movement where they tried to do that. And again, it's all about, at the end of the day for business owners, it's all about the legislation. What's written, what can I do to not violate people's civil rights, but at the same token, preserve the classiness of my establishment. So, they try to find ways. So again, it's a two-headed sword because you want to be able to allow businesses to dictate the kind of clientele they have because, let's say that somebody opens a bakery tomorrow and they want to cater to high-end couples or baby showers and things of that magnitude. Well, money's money. So if you're high-end, so let's say you have, it's funny because I think about the way things were. So there were certain, to segue like retail, in my day, there were certain types of clothing and certain retail branders we just couldn't afford. Mm-hmm. So, the thought of an African-American child running around wearing Gucci or what's the real popular one they're all starting to wear now that I'm like, wow, y'all can afford that kind of stuff? I know Gucci's Versace? One of them. Versace, like in my day, those were like high-end, stores you just didn't go into. Those were reserved for like real estate tycoons or billionaires or millionaires.
True.
And now, anybody can do them because money's money. And, people are making money today from being social media stars or rappers or athletes and things of that magnitude. So now these businesses are having to curve kind of what they do because, again, money is money. So if Gucci Mane can afford your stuff and, he's a little interesting character, per se, than the normal billionaire who walks into Gucci and says, give me everything on the shelf, what do you do as a business owner? Because that's not initially in your business. If that was not your target audience when you created your business, but again, because money is money and they can afford the product that you serve, what do you do? You can't tell them you can't come in here.
Well, then it creates sort of like a Starbucks situation. If you fall into a group that someone believes that your value is lesser to someone else, or your group has a tendency from a stereotype. I believe your group has a tendency, it's like I was just saying about the hippies that, we think all of you guys are into narcotics and overthrowing the government. And this could just be a peaceful youth, but you're going to go, this is what I know and this is what I read, and I think you're one of those hostile youth, and then you start you treat them in turn. So if somebody has these prejudices and they're in business, they're going to act them out. I think, and that's how it happens. I don't think society as a whole is this way, but when we have individuals that carry that with them, they take it wherever they go. I mean, if they're in politics, they're prejudiced. If they're in if they're in business, they're prejudiced. If they're in a social setting, they're prejudiced. So I believe where discrimination is for one person is the same, like Martin Luther King said, I believe, where there's you know that quote where he said there's something about where there's injustice in one, you know, yeah, is injustice everywhere. So, you know, it's the same with this, that if we just start allowing something to happen with this group or that group, and we don't look at it, you know, as a whole, as a society, then it'll raise its head on someone else. And so this is why these cases are seriously important, because we have to have a human race, and that there's human rights for everyone, not just exclusive groups.
All right, and on that note, we're going to take our first break, and we'll be back on the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.
Yo, this is Michael Cooper of Confunction, and we'll see you 4th of July at Lithonia Park. That's right, big family fun celebration. 4th of July, we'll be hanging out with Grammy Award-winning Dazz Band. That's right, Confunction Dazz Band, and my main man, the slave funk master, Mr. Stevie Arrington. Now for tickets, call 678-667-2269 or go to Lithonia 4th of July Funk Party in the Park on Eventbrite. Finally, CeCe Peniston's gonna be out there jamming with us, my girl from the 80s. Hey, we want you guys to know Lithonia City Park and Amphitheater 2515 Park Drive, Lithonia, Georgia. Tickets start at $35, hosted by the beautiful Miss Nishi Shaw, comedian Shula King, and Atlanta's own Planet Jazz All-Stars featuring Philippia Williams. Call the box office 678-667-2269 for the 4th of July Funk Party. Ow!
Leadership Blend, simplifying your leadership. All right, everybody, welcome to this week's edition of the Leadership Blend with your host Ricardo D. Rice and my correspondent
Chris Wyatt.
All right, so when we left, we were talking about the case of Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the same-sex couple, and in that particular case, he didn't want to make a cake for a same-sex couple marriage or civil union, and the Supreme Court sided with the baker Jack, but then I guess they discovered the case of Bartonelle Stutzman and her floral shop, which refused to do a floral arrangement for a same-sex couple back in, I believe, 2013. So as a result of it, the Supreme Court, they didn't rescind their decision. They just sent it back down to the lower courts to look at it again and said, hey, you know, maybe we should rethink this. Let's look at it again. You guys look at it again and see what you guys come up with after reviewing, I'm assuming the facts of the previous case, which is the floral case with Stutzman. So we're waiting to see what's the outcome with that. But what we were saying is it's important, particularly for protected classes of peoples, African Americans, Hispanics, people from other countries. It's important that we keep an eye on these kinds of cases because the outcomes of these cases will set the precedent for the next couple of years. So, because if they decide, hey, you know, and again, these cases are based on religious beliefs. And most of us know that religious beliefs can lead you down some dark roads because some religions have all kinds of belief. Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful because if we start allowing businesses to hide behind religion, you can find yourself back in slavery. It seems extreme, but it's not that extreme because again, the way the legislation is written protects businesses. So if a business is allowed too much leeway, discrimination will quickly set itself in. So it becomes vital that, you know, protected classes of people keep our eyes on these kinds of cases because again, the outcome sets the stage for the next couple of years or the next decade or next century. So we want to keep an eye on that to see what happens with that case. All right, so as most of us know, the beloved toy store, Toys R Us, recently closed down, I believe, all their U.S. stores.
Tears.
I know. They had a meme of Jeffrey, the giraffe, who was the mascot for Toys R Us, standing in an empty store with empty shelves with a bag and had his head down. It's a sad time because people, and I'm sure Chris, because we're almost the same age. He's older than me. You know, I have to throw that up every time. He's older than me.
Thank you so much.
But I have to throw that in every time. But, you know, in our day.
I'll take 2 vitamins tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
In our day, you know, Toys R Us was the store. Like, you wanted to get your parents to go to Toys R Us. You know, you wanted to be, they had a song and everything. It was like, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. There's a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with, from games to something to video games. It's the biggest toy store there is.
Yeah.
I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid and something. I don't know. I almost remember the song. I'm impressed. I almost remember the song. Kudos to me.
Pretty good.
But,
pretty good.
You know, kudos to me. But I wanted to go over Toys R Us because this story of how they went down is, for a business, a very interesting story. And for me, it's almost another Silicon Valley, which I have to really get into that one day. So it's very interesting. So here are some of the reasons that Toys R Us went down. Now, let me say this off the rip. The Toys R Us downfall is a very good look of what happens when a business does not revisit their marketing plans, their business plans often enough. Because sometimes we think we do a business plan and that's it. It's supposed to last for eternity. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. because the world and the landscape of business is ever changing. It becomes vital for a business to revisit your business plan, your marketing plan, especially a marketing plan, because case in point, I'm not going to go into it just yet, but let's just look at it off the top. With Toys R Us, you know, a marketing plan that they created back in 1980 is not going to be effective in the 2000s. Why? Because now you have to account for social media. Yes. In the 1980s, you didn't have to account for social media.
Online
There
sales.
was no such thing as social media. Hell, reality-wise, I think Toys R Us have been in business for like 50 years. So you're talking about 50, 60, blah, 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 blah. So back in that time, there weren't even cell phones. So you're not even accounting for cell phones yet. So imagine what their original business plan looked like. Not accounting for a lot, because again, back then you didn't have cell phones. You were still using landlines. There was no social media. People were still really using the mail service, and home delivery stuff wasn't popular. So people wasn't getting stuff delivered to their home like that. Mm-hmm. You know, like people expect, you know, you order something from Amazon, you expect to have it. We're mad if we don't get stuff delivered in 2 days from Amazon, or better yet, that day, because now you can pay what? Another $20, $30 to get it almost in the same day.
Yes.
So there was no accounting for any of that stuff when Toys R Us was created. So imagine what their business plan and their marketing plan looked like when they created the company. Fast forward 50-something years, a whole different world. So let's say that out the gate, you know, a whole different world, case in point. But it's important that businesses revisit your business plan and your marketing plan pretty often. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have a department, a marketing department, a PR department, then most of the time they probably are revisiting these things because they know that's a part of their job description. But if you're a small business and, you know, a mom and pop business and it's just you and, you know, you're trying to keep up with the times, you know, your business plan and your marketing plan, of course, they're your foundation, they're your cornerstone. But you have to make sure that you revisit them to make sure that they stay relevant so that you stay relevant. Because there's nothing worse than becoming irrelevant and going out of business, which in essence is what happened to Toys R Us. So here are the facts. All right, so Amazon originally made an exclusive deal with Toys R Us back in 2000 to have them as their primarily/only toy retailer when the internet was just beginning. So out the gate in 2000, Amazon made a deal with Toys R Us that, hey, we're only going to get toys from you guys. So that was the deal in 2000. In 2004, Amazon slowly began to change their business model and began to promote the same products under different toy retailers, despite Toys R Us signing a 10-year deal of exclusivity. Toys R Us paid $50 million a year to remain the exclusive toy retailer, and Amazon breached this contract. So what does that mean? That means that Toys R Us is paying Amazon $50 million a year to say you're only selling our toys. You're not selling anybody else's toys. You're just selling our toys. So in essence, now mind you, they made this deal in 2000, and in 2004, Amazon by then was starting to gain steam, started selling toys from other retailers. All right, so that's a breach of contract, which means you pretty much didn't fulfill your side. Whenever you hear the word breach, that means somebody did not fulfill their side of an agreement. In order to have a contract, you have to have consideration, legality. It's 4. Consideration, legality. I can't remember the other 2. In any event, you have to have consideration. Consideration for both sides, meaning your contract has to go in favor of both parties. It can't be one-sided. So when somebody breaches a contract, the contract becomes one-sided, which means you violated the contract. So in essence, Amazon violated their contract that they made with Toys R Us to only sell Toys R Us toys, which would have been cute, but Toys R Us was paying them $50 million to only sell their toys. So why were they paying them $50 million? The $50 million probably was to offset the fact that you're not selling anybody else's toys. So in essence, we're saying, okay, we know there's other toy dealers, but we're willing to pay you this set amount of money because this is the amount of money you probably would have lost or you're losing as a result of only selling our toys. So that's probably what the $50 million was for. All right. So in 2006, they won a suit against Amazon for breach of agreement. So when somebody breaches a contract, and this is business 101. If somebody breaches a contract, you take their happy highs to jail. That's just what it is. You take them to you take them to court.
Hides? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Shouts out to Mother Rush. I got that from Mother Rush. She'll say happy hide.
That's good. That's good.
You take their happy hide to court. Mm-hmm. Why do you go to court? Because just like in a case like this, they've been paying you. All right, we're saying 2000. They signed this in 2000. This happened in 2004. So in essence, for 4 years, they've been paying you $50 million for exclusivity. You're not selling anybody else's toys. You're only selling our toys. And we're going to mitigate your damage by paying you $50 million to offset what we think you're probably not making for only selling our toys. So in 4 years, they've already paid them what? $2 million? $200 million.
$200 million.
For exclusivity. So they violated this contract. So they took them to court in 2006 and won. Unfortunately, the agreement meant that Toys R Us was unable to even have their own website due to exclusivity of selling through Amazon. So Toys R Us had no website until 2006. So by then, you've already lost 6 years. Now, think about what happened from 2000 to 2006 as it pertains to the internet, as it pertains to the way we receive goods and services, all that stuff. So think about the time they lost in those 6 years. So just in that instance, it's a lesson to a business. If you're doing business with someone and you have a contract, particularly an exclusivity clause, which means you're only doing business with me, only. That's an exclusivity clause. I have the exclusive, you're only doing business with me, you're only allowed to do business with me, and you start to see the other company on the other side start to veer away from that, what should you do? You start filling the gaps. You have your department start looking at other ways to mitigate your own damages so that you won't be in a situation like Toys R Us. So with Toys R Us, they started breaching in 2004, but they didn't take them to court until 2006. All right, well, you've already lost 2 years. And we're talking about the early 2000s. So by now, the internet is starting to really emerge as the information highway. So now the way we do business has changed. You know, us walking into stores is starting to change. So the online retailers now have a bigger presence. So think about it. Toys R Us has lost 6 years already. All right, so this means that Toys R Us had to compete online with retailers and had a stronger online presence for almost a decade before they even had their own site. So they were already pretty much a decade behind. So in essence, Toys R Us not having a website was a big thing too. Of course, it wasn't it, but it was a big deal. Why was it a big deal? Because if your business does not have a website, especially if you're in the business of a tangible product like toys, where people want it and need it to have in their hands. It's not a customer service product. It's not a word-of-mouth product. It's a tangible product. And from 2000 to 2006, you're not able to get this tangible product in the hands of the people that buy your product. You're in trouble. And again, they couldn't have their own website because technically they still had to fulfill their part of the agreement with Amazon. So, you know, dishonesty is a terrible thing because in matters of business, dishonesty, you get into ethics versus the bottom line, which would segue us back to the whole Roseanne debacle. You know, ABC having Roseanne back on the air and Roseanne's show bringing 18 million viewers, which ABC hadn't seen in probably decades, and then Roseanne making these statements, which are not uncommon, by the way, but her making the statements to the capacity in this landscape to the point where Channing has to step in and say, you know what, we're going to cancel your show. She didn't think about it. She didn't give it a second thought. You know, but the backlash is you probably just lost about 18 million viewers. Hopefully they started watching other shows, but you just lost 18 million viewers. Ethics versus money. Now for ABC, you know, they do fine. 18 million is a lot of viewers, but they do fine with their other shows. But, you know, again, so what's your thoughts? Just on that part. Now, there's another part to Toys R Us that I'm going to get into in a few minutes. But
you know what? The way it got started, it seemed like a good idea. It's like partnering with somebody. But then when the business gets big and then someone else they have a lot of ideas. And so the first thing I saw with this is that Toys R Us became Amazon dependent.
Yeah.
So it's you know, they're dependent. They're not, like you said, they weren't really still looking out for themselves and trying to get ready to expand in other ways. They knew how big Amazon was with this online market, and they just wanted to kind of get in with them and then have them be, be their sole be the sole supplier of the toys. But there was a case with Famous Amos where he started out making the cookies, and he did all of that street marketing and different things, entrepreneur, made the brand. Then he lost it by letting them get a bigger group buy into what he was doing, and then he couldn't even use his name. I think he has a cookie out now called something no name or something like that. Like or a new name. He had to go where he couldn't even use his own name. So with some people you're in business with, you better really make sure that you really check them out. Make sure it's not strictly money that you guys are doing something about. That you check the moral code of who you're dealing with, because if they're very avarice and you know they're just straight up about money, they don't care nothing about you. And when there's another opportunity, and if there's a way to cut you out, they're going to cut you out. I think the same happened with McDonald's when what's the guy? Kroc.
Yeah.
When Kroc, he was like their main franchise seller, but then when he had so many ideas. He wanted to go against what they had as their SOPs and all the different things that they had in the franchise rules. He started wanting to do his own thing, and he found a way to get them bought out of their own business and pushed out, and he had sole control of the business with their name on it, that they founded. They put all their blood, sweat, and tears, and it was pulled right from under their feet. So because they didn't have any marketing ideas, they never invested in that. They just thought, hey, we got a great idea, and that's it. And the next thing you know, somebody with a real cunning, clever business mind was thinking about 1,000 other things. They're thinking about what's going on in the modern era, not when you started. And that's a big problem, like you said. If you don't have that update constantly, keeping yourself in the time you're in, not when you got started, then you can find yourself being Toys R Us.
Well, okay, so again, this is where we segment it and we synthesize this. Okay, so how does this story translate into small business? All right, so I'm glad you asked. All right.
Inquiring minds want to know.
You know, I'm glad you asked. All right, so let me use an example of authors. All right, so I went through this myself, and I actually read it. So I saw it, and I was like, wow, people are not going to read this. All right, so in the case of self-publishing authors, typically self-publishing authors will go through CreateSpace. I think CreateSpace is owned by Amazon. So when you do your contract, you will see in the contract, it will say when you get to the distribution and the money part of it, when you do CreateSpace, and between the two, they send you the contract when you put your book up and blah, blah, blah. In the contract, they give you two choices. Now, I can't remember the specifics, but I know there's two choices. One choice is you get the bulk of the money, but it's not, you don't get a big chunk of it. So it's like a 30, I think it's a 30-70 split. You get the 30, they get the 70. Reciprocally, you can get the 70, and I think they get the 30, but the catch is exclusivity. What does that mean? That means you take more money on the front end, but you can't sell your book anyplace else but Amazon. Didn't know that. Yes, when you get the contract, for all you self-publishing authors out there, read that contract and read the percentages. Because I was getting ready to jump for, I want all the money. Give me all the money. Yeah. You can't sell your book anywhere else. Amazon owns your book. You can only sell it through Amazon. So again, with businesses, it's not always about the front end. You got to think about the back end. You think I'm kidding? Segue to music. A lot of these older artists never brought the rights to their masters. So when they got into their old age, they couldn't do anything with their music because the record labels owned their music. Short-term thinking. All they thought about was, I want the money right now. You know, I want to get this. I ain't worried about the masters. I'm good. They got into their older age. Now you can't even make any money off a lot of this stuff because you don't own the rights to your music. Now, apparently, I think Prince is one of the few artists that brought his masters, I believe. I want to say it was him. I think he brought the rights to his masters. So he's good. He can make money off his music. You know, he's gone now, but his family can make money off the music for, times to come. But there were a lot of artists, especially older artists, who never brought their masters or the rights to their music. True. And only the record labels own their music. So now you can't make any money off of it. It's your music, but you don't own the rights to your music. And it's the same thing, again, with book writing. So that was a little tidbit. That was free. I threw that out there for you. For all the people that want to be authors and you want to self-publish, make sure if you're going to go through Amazon and CreateSpace, make sure you read that fine print because it sounds good in the short term, but in the long term, it's not good because you can't sell your book anywhere else. Just thought I would throw that out there. Wow. So you have to be mindful of big companies because that's where they get you. They get you on the exclusivity. Hey, we'll definitely facilitate your music. We'll facilitate your book. We'll happily facilitate. but you can't sell it anywhere else. But don't worry about that because you'll make enough money with us. Yeah, no. There's so many other venues by which to sell music, to sell books. You do not want to limit yourself or pigeonhole yourself into one way of selling your book or your music for that matter. So these are all things to think about. Now, it does not sound great on the front end because on the front end, you're like, well, look, I just need to get my music out there. I just need to get my book out there. And I need all the money I can to keep going. That's short-term vision. When you have a business or when you have a brand, let's make this broader. When you have a brand, it becomes vital that you look at your long term and say, well, you know what? It may make my struggle a little harder now, but on the back end, I own all of this. This is all mine, and I can do whatever I want to do with it so that when it does kick up, because if your book's on Amazon and people start seeing it, yeah, you'll have a bigger presence. You may not get as much money, but you're still on Amazon. So people are still going to see your product, and as people see it, they'll suggest other sites. Well, hey, did you put your book on Goodreads? Or, did you put your book on, I don't know, Barnes & Nobles? Because apparently they have an online division too. Did you put your book these other places? And you go, you know what? I can put my book there and make more money. If you've done the exclusivity thing with Amazon, you can't even utilize any of those other avenues because Amazon owns your book. So you can only sell your book through Amazon. So you got to think about those kind of things when it comes to business, short-term goals versus long-term goals. Yes, some things may make things a little harder in the short term, which, that is uncomfortable. But in the long term, is it a better decision long-term wise? Especially for my authors and my musicians. Think about these kind of things, especially musicians. There's nothing worse than you making great music for years and then you get in your old age and think you just get royalty checks from your music only to discover you don't own the rights to your music. And they decided they don't want to give you money for it.
But it goes back to the saying of slow and steady wins the race versus trying to get things so fast. That trying to be a success overnight, truthfully, is a dangerous thing in all avenues because you're just so about getting the attention, getting the acknowledgement, getting the money that the business people say, oh, we'll put that out as a carrot. This person doesn't realize on the back end, we're going to make 20 times what they're getting on the front end, and then we own the rights to do all kind of things if this thing really does blow up. So it's just keeps going back to we're now in this quick era of doing everything fast. And definitely social media has helped with that, and all of our technologies of having a lot of electronics to be able to do what we want to do. It means, we have to slow down. We just got to slow down. Don't worry about if it's going to happen by tomorrow morning, and look at the future. And that's where a lot of things aren't happening. People are just looking at like what's going to happen in the next, even just in the year versus what happens 5-10 years. Like sometimes if I ask someone a question about their future and I'll say, what you see yourself doing in 5-10 years? And some of them have a hard time with that because they can really only see, 6 months from now. And you're like, well, business people, they don't. And if you're going to go and deal with other people, they're not looking at you as a 6-month venture. If they're going to invest in you, they're looking at something bigger. And it was something that was said by T.D. Jakes. He said, if you see construction equipment out like on your, out near your home or something or near a property, best believe it's something major that's about to happen. You would need that kind of equipment for some small thing. So if you see all of these people hoo-hooing around you and they got lawyers and all this, best believe you got a product. You better take your time and that they know you have a real gift and they're ready to jump in like vultures on you. So it's best to pause, hold back, and then fly forward much farther with knowing exactly what's going on, maybe getting some legal counsel.
Well, like I tell people, a lot of the things that have become so cliche that we say, a mission statement, a vision statement, all these things are designed to allow your business to properly grow and properly thrive. So that's why it becomes vital that you put in the time and the energy to make a good mission statement, to make a good vision statement, because both of those things are kind of your cornerstones that you kind of go back to whenever, you're at an iffy place or when you need to make moves. Your mission statement is something that you want to be able to have be a lasting throughout your company. Like I said, it's very rare that I hear people go back and revamp their mission statement. It happens, but you don't hear it too often. Why? Because people put the thought into it out the gate. But, on that note, I'm going to pause because we do need to take a break. So everybody stick around the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.
You hungry?
IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
Ricardo D. Rice from the Leadership Blend, airing every Monday from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. on IBNX Radio. Talk in it. All right, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my correspondent,
Chris Wyatt, and we're back.
All right, so when we left, we were starting the whole demise of Toys R Us. It's a sad day, which I don't think it happened today, but it's still a sad day today because I'm in the studio today. So it's a sad day, you know, when you look at an American retailer, actually a global retailer, because they have stores in, I think, Europe as well, and the UK. So it's a sad day because they had to close all their stores in the United States. So, of course, that means people are out of work. Landlords won't be making money off those buildings. It's a sad situation. So when we left, I was giving the synopsis of what happened. And the reason I'm doing that is because, you know, again, the show is all about synthesizing information to make it practical. So people go, oh, well, Toys R Us closed. Tough crap for them. Well, it's a story of what can happen to a company, again, that does not necessarily revisit their business plan, their marketing plan, and doesn't, you know, once people get to a certain level, they feel like, I don't want to say invincible, but they give less thought to stuff they would have normally given a lot more thought to. So when we were looking at the timeline, we're talking about this demise really started at about 2004. It may have been sooner, but it gets really direct at around 2004 when they get into a contract with Amazon. And Amazon says to them, well, hey, you know, why don't we enter this deal where we'll only sell your toys and nobody else's? Now, there was a $50 million payoff every year. I don't know if that was something that Amazon came up with or that was something that Toys R Us did in good faith. Not really sure, but in any event, there was there was an exclusivity contract, which means Amazon only sells Toys R Us toys, and there was a $50 million payoff we'll say that we'll say in good faith. I'm not sure who did it, but we'll say in good faith, Toys R Us said, well, hey, you know, because you're only selling our toys, we feel like you're probably going to lose this amount of money because you're only selling our toys. So in good faith, we'll give a $50 million payoff every year to offset the fact that you can't sell anybody else's toys. Now, again, that's just an example. Not sure where the $50 million came from as far as who came up with that number, but we'll say Toys R Us did it in good faith because I just believe in Toys R Us and I love them. So I'm going to say in good faith, they said, hey, we're going to throw in $50 million to offset, to mitigate your damages because you can only sell our toys. Well, in 2004, Amazon, by then it's starting to gain steam, decided, yeah, we're just going to breach the contract and we're going to sell other people toys. So in a matter of business, for Toys R Us, right, actually, they shouldn't have waited 2004 to even address this. Let's be honest. What they should have done was I'm sure they realized, hey, you know, Amazon's selling other people's toys. In that moment, first of all, I would have started litigation then. I'd have called my legal counsel and, hey, they can't do this. So what are we going to do to deal with this? Because they can't do this. That's what I would have done first. Because as a business, you have a duty to try to mitigate your own damages. What does mitigate mean? Minimize. So you have an obligation to try to minimize your damages. So in this particular case, the damages is, okay, well, you're the only outlet we're using outside of people coming physically in our stores to sell our toys. So if you're not going to exclusively sell our toys, then we need to start finding other venues. Now, again, I can say that, but that's kind of rough because then now you're in breach too. So you're both would be in breach of a contract. In good faith, you don't want to do stuff like that. But, you know, it's kind of an eye for an eye type deal in this situation because the result of them breaching this contract and Toys R Us not moving fast enough not only created a downward spiral, it also started putting them in debt, which is where I'm getting ready to go after I give the recap. So again, 2004, they realized they're not exclusively selling their toys like they're supposed to be, which they had a contract stating that, but Toys R Us didn't get to court until 2006. So in this exclusivity clause, Toys R Us was not allowed to have a website. Well, what do you think that means? That means, again, they can't sell their toys anywhere else, any other outlet, because now they can't have a website. So if you can't have your own personal website, you can't post your toys on anybody else's website either. So their hands are tied. So they can't get to court until 2006 to be released from the contract, which was breached by Amazon. So imagine 2000 to 2006. Think about how fast the internet had already started, you know, becoming the information highway by 2006. So by the time they get this and break the contract legally, it's 2006, and they had no website. So now, you know, 2000, you're talking about 6 years. But you're talking about 6 years in the early 2000s. A lot happened between 2000 and 2006.
Ricardo, guess what I'm hearing here? If they're paying Amazon, listen to this. They're paying Amazon to be their exclusive toy supplier or retailer. And you're paying somebody to say, I want you to, so already they're in a second-rate position right from the door. Because if you're doing so well with your business, and see, they're not manufacturers, I don't think. I think they were just a huge retailer. I could easily go directly cut you out as a middleman, basically, because your business is a brand. So you're selling your brand of Toys R Us. But at the same time, the toys themselves, I don't need you. You're not the manufacturer. It's not like I'm going to Mattel or something like that. I'm not going directly to the company and then we set up a deal. You're basically, you know, kind of leeching off of how big I'm blowing up, and you want to see if you can get in my shine, and you even paying me. So you really like almost became a groupie of the larger business and the business that's on the cutting edge. Amazon was on the cutting edge of what was going on. Mm-hmm. Toys R Us is trying to piggyback, and they're wanting to pay to play, and so they got played. They really got played, and in the meantime, they weren't even working on their own innovations and so it's a couple of things there. Because after I'm thinking about all the detail, you're paying somebody. That's like me paying you to be in a relationship with me. You know, like paying somebody. that's called a call situation or something like that. What I'm saying is,
I feel like you just called Amazon a prostitute.
well,
in
in some
essence.
kind of ways, they're paying them so that you'll say, okay, but when you want to sell some toys, you'll use mine, and here's some money. Like, you have to put money out just so we can do business. You're already in a bad spot because you're supposed to come in as a full entity of a power of my brand and of something that we have that independently we're good. But no, this became a lean on, and as we see now, they sold themselves totally out. Because that business is Americana. That should be around like a McDonald's. Like, you know how the car manufacturers had some help from the government. Didn't they go in to save those companies? They were going down too. Wasn't a lot of our General Motors. Mm-hmm. So Toys R Us, because it basically was a financial laziness, kind of a trying to get on the bandwagon of somebody moving, and you're not moving.
Well, and again, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when you look at the picture as a whole, because let's answer some important questions. These are the kind of questions you want to ask yourself when you're a business owner. So, in this Toys R Us situation, let's ask one primary question. Did kids stop playing with toys? No.
I just stopped last night. That was it. I put all my toys away. I said, that's it. I have to grow up tonight. Okay.
Again, the primary question, because Toys R Us sells toys. So the question becomes, is there no longer a market for toys? Yes, there is a market for toys. So that wasn't the issue. It wasn't that you don't have a market for your products. Kids are still being born. And even if the number of kids declines over, the birth rate declines, you're still talking about millions of kids, and your stores are not just in the United States. So there's still millions, billions of kids being raised and born, and toys are not something that I don't believe will ever go obsolete. Now, the way we play with toys may be a little different because now you have more electronic toys, but in essence, they're still toys. Mm-hmm. And toys are stuff that typically kids play with. So there's still a market. There's still a supply and demand that can be met because the demand is still toys. You supply toys. So it wasn't a problem of you not having a market to sell your product. Kids still play with toys. That's the primary question. So then the question becomes, so what did we do wrong? Well, just like Chris said, you paid to play, and this is where a lot of business owners, and oftentimes this is where you'll find the downfall of businesses, because the business owners never take the time to diversify their own personal portfolio, their own personal knowledge portfolio. What does that mean? Meaning learning all aspects of your business. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert in every aspect of your business, but you should at least have some working knowledge of every aspect of your business. And when you trust companies like this and you pay a third-party company to come in and be accountable for the practices of your business, you put yourself in a very vulnerable position. You see this all the times with, I'll say, athletes. Most of them never take the time to understand the dynamics of finances. So what do? They hire an accountant. They hire a CPR or a CPA or things of that magnitude who come in and are specialists in this area. But because they have no working knowledge of anything dealing to finances, what do? They take full advantage of them. And before you know it, they're broke. And they're on Tahiti. The accountant is in Tahiti having a good day because he done transferred all your money to the Cayman Islands because you didn't have any working knowledge of every aspect of your business. It's business 101. Again, it doesn't mean you have to be an expert in stuff because I don't like numbers like that. But I promise you, I understand money to the capacity that I know how to do my accounts payable and my accounts receivable. I know that much. So you want to always have a working knowledge of every aspect of your business. Does not mean you have to be great at it, but you just have to have a working knowledge. And Toys R Us did not do that. Now, again, Toys R Us ended up in $6.2 billion worth of debt. How does that happen? It happens when you try to play catch up, which is what happens with Toys R Us. So let's go back to the timeline. So in 2006, they take them to court, and I'm assuming they win. But they haven't had a website for decades. So by the time you get to 2006, they're not the only people. They're not the only toy stores. Because now you have, I think, KB Toy Stores was there. I'm not saying they wasn't before, but I'm just saying KB Toy Stores is there. Now Walmart is starting to sell toys. Kmart is starting to sell toys. I want to say some of the other retailers are selling toys. They're all selling toys.
Target.
Yeah, they're all starting to sell toys. So it's no more a niche market for Toys R Us anymore. So again, now we're in 2006. So retailers are now starting to slowly phase out people only being able to go into a store to get toys. Now you can start ordering them online. And at this point, Amazon was smart. So Amazon was like, well, we're going to hold you to this contract because at this point, it's a lot easier for us to breach it and still be able to do what we're doing because in essence, we're breaching it, but we're still building relationships with other toy distributors. So we're doing what we got to do. And look, hey, we'll take your $50 million and we'll keep you in this contract because now you can't sell your toys to anybody else, but we can. So that's in essence what Amazon kind of did. They were like, okay, well, we're going to start building a relationship with other toy makers, other toy distributors. We're going to keep you in this contract. We're going to get your $50 million. So by now, it's 2004 when they realized that they were breaching it. They're $200 million richer. So we're going to take your $200 million. We're going to build some other relationships with some other toy distributors. And we're going to keep our website. So we're going to sell your toys, their toys, everybody toys. Mm-hmm. So now we're making money off you. You can't do anything else about it. We're making money off them. And we done made $200 million off of you. Why? Because Amazon realized what they were good at. Amazon had a long-term goal to be the biggest online presence there is, which, hey, fast forward to 2018. Who's the biggest online presence? Amazon. So what happens to Toys R Us? In trying to play catch up, which by now is 2006. So again, people are not really trying to get people to go into stores. They see that online and the internet has taken over. So by this time, people are getting into the habit of, hey, I don't have to go to the store to take care of Christmas. Oh, I can order everything online. By this time, Amazon has gained so much steam. Now people are ordering toys and stuff through Amazon. So Amazon is now saying, hey, you ain't got to go to Toys R Us. You can order their stuff right on our online presence, and we'll ship it to your house. So now Toys R Us is playing debts. So Toys R Us has millions to play every year to keep this debt in check, which I didn't know you had to do. But apparently, Toys R Us had to pay so much money so that the debt, and I'm assuming it's probably paying the interest on the debt or something to that magnitude so that the debt doesn't get higher. So now they're paying money to not go deeper in debt. Crazy, I know. But they're paying money not to go deeper in debt. So Toys R Us has a plan to unveil a subscription-based delivery service and cheaper expedited shipping options. However, both were unfeasible because how much money they have to fork out to kind of revamp the way they do toys. So Toys R Us did not keep up with online sales opportunities. TV commercials and stuff of that magnitude started to slide off because at the end of the day, you have to make money to spend money.
Guess what else I noticed, Ricardo, is the Toys R Us that I've seen over my lifetime, they all seem to be mostly in shopping centers. Like I've never seen a lot of them directly connected inside malls. Now, and I've seen them because they're so huge. It seemed like they made themselves into, like a big mammoth kind of business that needs a lot of square footage, and they would have to be in like some place where you can have big, large stores where you have furniture and different things, and they really aren't inside of malls because malls always get that foot traffic from all the businesses and your food courts and your this and that. So it's drawing it. Even on bad weather days, you get people in the mall. But if you're just one of them shopping centers you can just walk up to that one store at a time and you got to walk outside and walk to the next business. Mm-hmm. That's where I've seen them over years. I have not really seen them. And it seemed like they should have innovated themselves to say, you know what, we have to look at some other ways to have our products, be offered to the customer. If we're just doing this one way and we had this exclusive contract and that's all we're looking at, I think they just, made themselves extinct by just not having like a lot of business acumen. It just sounds like you said, business 101. You have to stay up on things and you can't just count on one source or one large source only. You have to have a lot of streams and outlets. You just can't have, I got this Amazon outlet and I have my brick and mortar. That's it.
Well, think about it this way. Okay, so again, all this really comes to a head in 2006. We're in 2018 now. So we're talking about, 12 years ago? So imagine having a company. Now, I just got a timeline. So Toys R Us pretty much has been around since pretty much 1950. So you're talking about a long time. You're talking about 70 years. So imagine doing what you do, doing it well, and then you cross over into the 2000s. This time you're scourging. You're like, okay, well, something's on the horizon. We're not really versed into it. We're probably not into it because we've been around since 1950. And this is where companies get in trouble because, and it's hard because now you got to decipher, is this a fad or is this something that's actually going to be around? So at this time, the internet is still new. And, you know, people are probably going to say, especially you're talking about 1950s. So by now, the people who are in management for this company, they're probably baby boomers at this point. Well, as a generational leadership theorist, baby boomers are one of the harder groups to get to change because they like things one way. That's all they know. And they're great at management because they're so stern. And whatever they know, that's what they stick to. But they're not very good with being versatile. So by this time, your leadership is probably all baby boomers who are probably going, oh, the internet is just a fad. Don't worry about it. So when you have your board meeting, you're like, okay, well, maybe we should divert some resources to internet. And they're going, no, the internet's a fad. Don't worry about it. You know what? Let's just do this. Let's just find a third-party company to take care of the internet crap because it'll be gone tomorrow. I'm not saying that's what happened, but in my head, that's what I'm thinking probably happens. So at that point, you go, okay, well, we're not going to divert our resources to really get into how we stay abreast of the internet. We're just going to hire a third-party company. They can figure it out and take care of it, and we'll just pay them money. So in essence, that's what I'm believing what happened. So that's what they did. They paid a third-party company to come in, which was Amazon. Amazon being the crafty, full of millennials company going, we just need to sign us a big retailer to get us started. Yeah. So they signed on Toys R Us. And they had their little their little millennials in the back with their little, well, actually at that time, it was probably Generation X and Generation Y, in the background with their little phones. And at that time, they probably had their little sidekicks, you know, making deals with other retailers in the back wings. And they'll go, you know what? The cost to break this contract is probably far less than us devoting all these potential retailers we could get involved to make us bigger. So in essence, that's what they did. They did a cost-benefit analysis and said, you know what? It will cost us less to just break this contract, because at least with breaking this contract, Toys R Us, because we know their board is full of baby boomers who are not going to invest anything else into the internet because they think it's a fad. It's easier for us to just break this contract, keep them in the exclusivity clause, get their $50 million, and do stuff on the side to build our clientele. Because you're not going to go to court overnight, because going to court is a process. So they're not going to get to court tomorrow. It's going to be 2 or 3 years before they get to court, which this happened in 2004. It took them 2 years to get a decision. That's 2 years they lost. I'm pretty sure Amazon counted on that. So Amazon went, you know what? They didn't take the time to learn about the internet. We did. So we're going to make the best of this situation.
Isn't that trying to make themselves like have a monopoly as far as in toys? It's, you know, if you're trying to make yourself exclusive, then you're not going to be competitive, and that's what makes makes capitalism work for the consumers, because you have a lot of businesses vying for your business as a consumer, and therefore they have to work on their products, they have to work on their pricing, they have to work on giving you some kind of good feeling, and you know, customer service. They got to work on all of those things. And if I'm the only one, I don't have to do anything, because I can just be this big buffalo, and I'm going to be able to do what I want to do no matter. And you have to either get my product or you don't get any at all. And so that's that real, like you said, that's some of that 1950s, almost back to the 20s, when you got these big railroad Mongols and oil Mongols and all this. They're trying to make some business deals that just nobody else can make it, you know, get in business, and they can put other people out of business, and then it's just going to be me and you, and that's what it seems like. Somebody made, I don't know if it was a board decision, if it was a CEO that made some kind of deal, and I bet somebody got something good out of it, because usually when some deals are being made, somebody's cashing in on it. So I don't know how it got done, but it definitely wasn't good to be a competitive business if you're just trying to become a monopoly or an exclusive business within the online market, when you know that this is a worldwide market. So you're going to say, I want to be the only product or the only company in this whole worldwide market, which means I'm going to sit back like some kind of, you know, big fat cat and kick my feet up on the desk and just say, all right, we just sit here and start waiting to count the money. and as we see, it wasn't a good deal.
I mean, but again, at the end of the day, you don't want to be the company that lags behind, what your company needs to be successful and to thrive. And again, I'm looking at Toys R Us's timeline because USA Today did a timeline on all this stuff with Toys R Us, and I think I forgot that it wasn't just Toys R Us. So there's Toys R Us, there was Babies R Us, there's Kids R Us. So whoever was in charge in the beginning had a vision. It's just the supporting cast around him. I'm going to say they didn't grab the vision and run with it because as a result, you start seeing things. Now, that's not to say that Toys R Us took it and just kind of laid down and didn't do anything. So in 2005, Bain Capital, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, and Bernardo Realty Trust, they brought Toys R Us, taking it private in a $6.6 billion leveraged buyout deal. The plan was to boost sales and position the company for a stock offering in a few years that would let the investors cash out. In 2009, the company buys eToys.com and Toys.com and toy retailers KB Toys and FAO Schwartz. So they made moves. Again, once you fall behind in an age of technology, it's just too hard to catch up because let's think about it. And I'm sticking with the simple timeline we had. So we're talking about a timeline from 2000 to 2006. Okay, well, you can't make any real moves until 2006. Well, you already lost 6 years. And in the 2000, that's a lot of time to lose. So you already lost 6 years. Now, by the time you get to 2006, you only done business one way. You've only done business where people walk into your store, purchase the toys, and go home. So now you have to revamp the whole way you do business. So what does that mean? Now, not only do you have to get a website, you have to get third-party contractors involved like, well, you have a bad relationship with Amazon, so we ain't gonna say Amazon. But FedEx, UPS, the people who deliver stuff, you got to create relationships with them. Then you got to create a whole new system that allows you to sell toys online, not only with a third-party company, but in your own company itself. So Toys R Us has to be able to distribute their own stuff from Toys R Us. That requires a whole new system. That requires a whole new thought process. That requires a whole new business and marketing plan because now your target audience has changed. Because your target audience is no longer just parents who bring their kids to your store to buy them their Christmas gifts and their birthday gifts. Now your target audience is pretty much every darn person. Because most people, if they don't have a child or are a big kid themselves, you got to factor all this stuff in. And now you got the emerging of video games. So now you got the factor for video games, which don't only cater to just kids, it caters to adults as well. So just in that small instance, that whole revamp itself is going to take you a number of years to you can't create systems and stuff like that overnight. That's a process. Then you got to solicit the best talent to come in. You got to pay them. You can't pay anybody because you're already in $6.2 billion worth of debt from trying to play catch up. It was a lose-lose. So, honestly, businesses, stay abreast of what's going on in your company because if you don't, this is what can happen. And here we are, fast forward, we'll just say from 2006. 2006 to 2018, you're talking about what, 12 years? In 12 years, Toys R Us has gone under. So what is the lesson? Always revisit your business plan and your marketing plan to ensure that you are appropriately meeting the needs of your target demographic because it may change, and most of the time it will change. And always account for internet. It's not going anywhere. It's not a fad. If anything, it's going to get worse. So always account for it. I hate when a company tells me, when I say to them, I go, what's your website? I don't have a website. Or, where else are you selling your stuff? People just come in the store. You're not going to be in business long because people are instinctively lazy. We were talking about this the other day, me and one of my friends. The mere fact that I don't have to go to a restaurant to get the food that I want in the middle of the day is a problem for me. I can call Grubhub, I can call Uber Eats, and I don't have to leave the comforts of my home. What does that mean for restaurants? Just a tidbit. You're going to have to either get on board with the home delivery food debacle, or you need to learn how to do that for your own company because that's only going to get worse. That is not a fad, people. To all my restaurant owners, that is not a fad. this is only going to get worse because now people are going to start cashing in. So I'm waiting around between the end of this year and next year. I'm expecting another emerging delivery company of food to come up. And I'm also expecting another type of delivery for other stuff to come up. Something silly. Like next thing you know, people will start delivering a car to your house. You even have to go, actually they do it.
Yeah.
Carvana, they do that.
Yeah.
You even have to go to the lot anymore. You can go
Oh,
online
yeah.
and buy a car and it comes to your house.
Brides in the mail.
I need people. Companies have to see the trends.
It's-
You got to see the trends
Yeah.
because what does that mean? Actually, it kind of works if you think about it. Because, okay, case in point, a car dealer. So if the business module is now going to become like Carvana, I think it's Carvana. Is that the name of it, Carvana?
Yeah.
Carvana. If that's going to be the new business model, then I don't have to waste time with a building because you can buy my car online. So I don't have to waste time on a building. I don't have to waste the money on a building. That's one. So you can devoid real estate. Now, the backlash to that is the realtor that owns that's trying to sell that property is going to lose revenue because now you're not buying a building anymore, or you're not renting a building anymore because you don't need it. So, everybody has to account for something. So just in that small instance, we've already accounted for realtors and we've accounted for car dealerships. That relationship goes hand in hand.
Stay current, stay up to date.
Businesses have to pay attention to what's trending. And like I said, just in that example of loan, this whole ideology, which personally I think is making Americans fat and lazy, this whole trend of you don't have to leave your house to get stuff done, I don't like it. And I think it leaves too much of a it's just not good. Because again, you start affecting people's wallets, you start affecting the way we do business. And even when we talk about the way we communicate, we have this fight. I have this fight with millennials all the time. I'm not going to just say millennials because it's not just y'all. And yes, I'm looking at you, Sophie. It's not just y'all. But I don't think we understood when we really let things like, I'm going to tell my age. You're going to see my age from when I say this, but it's fine because it's for the example. It's for the culture. When we start doing things
Wakanda
like,
forever.
Wakanda forever. When we start doing things like BlackBerry Messenger, Yahoo IM, when we allowed that stuff to start coming in and we didn't find a way to preserve the day-to-day and the face-to-face interactions we were accustomed to, I feel like we did the millennials and Generation Z a disservice because now they've grown up in a culture where all we want to do is text each other, email each other, IM each other, FaceTime each other, and we don't know how to interact on a face-to-face basis.
True.
The face-to-face etiquette we were taught, they no longer teach. So these kids come into interviews, they can't look you in the eye, they can't hold a conversation.
True.
Why? Because they're so used to sending an email or sending an IM or doing a text message, they're not accustomed to doing face-to-face interactions. We've done these kids a disservice because now they don't understand the general practices of business. Now, yes, has business changed? It's changed, but it hasn't changed that much because at the end of the day, an email cannot convey everything I'm trying to convey as it pertains to business by itself. At some point, we're going to have to sit down and have a conversation face-to-face.
True.
This is the part where millennials and Generation Z, they fail. They're great at the technology part, but they fall victim when it's time to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with an individual or with a company or a representative. So what does that mean? Most of them don't interview very well. Most of them don't really understand the art of closing a deal when it comes to face-to-face. And most of them just don't understand the dynamics of doing face-to-face business, which is a part of doing business.
Right.
I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we completely phase out having to sit down with somebody. You're just not. It doesn't matter how many contracts you come up with. It doesn't matter how many new technology platforms you create. I don't think you're ever going to be able to replace the sit-downs and go over what's actually in this contract. And if you do, I think it's to our detriment because what's going to happen is instinctively people don't read. The simplest things we don't read. We see numbers.
They have to be Twitter-sized messages. And then they'll read it now. It's Twitter-sized messages. There we go. Then they'll read now. But beyond that, I don't know. A lot of scrolling.
They're just not going to read.
Scrolling.
And again, we've done these kids a disservice, and we've done ourselves a disservice because, in other countries, they still do the sit-downs and have the meetings face-to-face.
Yeah.
They're still doing this stuff, but we trying to be the
Like you
leaders
said,
of
that
the
if
free world.
someone's in a whole nother, geographic area, obviously you might have to do something till you can make your face-to-face. But the face-to-face is the real clincher and the way to have the integrity of the business going the way it's supposed to, versus just all this electronic conversation.
It's a sad day. I'm worried about the United States and the way we do business and the way we teach our next generation. But you know what? Enough of that. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Chris White is going to do his Wait What segment. So stick around, the Leadership Blend with your host,
and I'm waiting.
Ricardo D. Rice.
Okay. Be right back.
Can't believe that I'm home all alone. Doesn't stop me from wanting to see you. Why the hell won't you pick up the phone? Hello? Don't know which way is up anymore. No excuses and nothing to cling to. Oh, you're shaking me right to the core. Just wanna let you know I won't let this one go. You got me down, but I ain't out. Think you got me good, left me like some dead wood. I may be down, but I'll turn it round. All my friends said I told you so. They ain't making me feel any better, but it's up in his own with the show. Got me aching inside of my skin. No excuses and nothing to cling to. You gon' pay for the state that I'm in. Just wanna let you know I won't let this one go. You got me down, I ain't out. Think you got me good, left me like some dead wood. I may be down, but I'll turn it round. But you gon' see wise of me, and I won't break down easily. Hell no. Just wanna let you know I won't let this one go. You got me down, but I ain't out. You think you got me good, have me like some dead wood. And I may be down, but I'll turn it round. Just wanna let you know I won't let this one go. Down, but I think you got me good, left me like some dead wood. I may be down, but I'll turn it round. Don't you go, don't you go,
Every now and then, I remember when I went out on my own, searching here and there for someone to care, feeling so all alone, but his love did not The moment came and went. I was feeling discontent. Where was I supposed to go? Then you came along, making right what once was wrong. Your love never failed, and now I know.
Listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music. Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce. This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
Ricardo D. Rice from the Leadership Blend, where we're simplifying your All right, everybody, we are back on this week's edition of Leadership Blend with Ricardo D. Rice and my correspondent,
Chris Wyatt.
All right, so we're going to go into Chris Wyatt's segment of Wait, What? But before we do, all right, so the sitting intern today, Miss Sophie, wants to say hi to everybody. So say hello to the people. Tell them your full name.
My name is Sophisha Muslim, and I'm from New York City, and I just moved to Atlanta.
The Big Apple in the house. Yeah.
Oh, good God.
Yeah.
All right, so for those that don't know, if you're watching us on IBNX, which is live, she's been sitting here kind of feeding information, and finally she decided she wanted to chime in. So,
hey, Ricardo, I knew we had this little connection. See, I'm a Philly boy right down the road from New York. Just to say.
Here we go. Anyway.
I'm just mad.
Anyway.
Philly, New York.
So we're going to turn to Chris, and we're going to see what Sophie has. So we're going to see how insightful she is when it comes to topics and stuff. So take it away.
Wait, what? Listen. This really is it's a current issue, and you just gotta think about this one, okay? Now in Georgia, on the 1st, they came up with the hands-free driving, okay? So in our paper here, our local paper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, they have an article about this exact law going into effect, and it really gave me a wait what moment. The new hands-free rules in Georgia are in effect, and this is from the article. Like it or not, drivers can no longer hold or rest their phone on their bodies unless they need to make an emergency call. I'm quoting this article. And they cannot touch these mobile devices except for phone calls and some GPS interactions anytime the car isn't legally parked. But the Hands-Free Georgia Act does allow complete use of in-car infotainment systems to handle calls, hand-free texting, GPS, streaming audio, and other functions on screen in a vehicle's dashboard. A 2015 study even shows how hand-free tasks can cause high rates of distractions that last beyond the tasks themselves. Researchers measured how long drivers took their eyes off the road, the mental load drivers needed to complete the task, and how long each interaction took. The study showed that the most trying task is navigation, which test drivers needed an average of 40 seconds to complete these tasks in the vehicle's system. Now listen, they're saying that the law says you can't hold your cell phone, you can't touch it or do different things with it except in emergencies. But they said that you can access and touch your infotainment as far as your music and different things like that, your navigation. Now, that is really a terrible and horrible law to me, because how is it that you can't hold your phone, you can't be touching it or holding it in your hand or putting it up to your ear, but at the same time I can be trying to change my playlist, I can be on there trying to figure out where I'm trying to go, and that's not a distraction. They said that's legal. So, you know, I'm every distraction to me is a possible chance for a crash or to kill somebody. And they're saying this is from the law. This is a legal decision that it's okay. It's okay to be messing with your, you know, touching your screen on your dashboard, and doing different things. But at the same time, they're saying that you can't have your cell phone, but now you can have some other engagements while you're driving. Now, it only takes a half a second to kill somebody by not looking, or to crash by not looking. I mean, if you're in a lot of traffic and you just take your focus off and you're in that traffic jam, you'll have a fender bender. And now they're saying that this law, which is affecting a lot of people in Georgia, that you can't hold your cell phones and do different things like you've seen plenty of people doing. Some even have it at their ear, but that it's okay to touch and access our infotainment. That is just ludicrous. It's a distraction. All distractions are bad. So what about pulling over to read a map? What I'm saying is, Ricardo, listen. What the old days, you had to pull over and read a map,
Chris,
right?
when is the last time you pulled over to read a map?
I'm saying this to be very facetious, because I know nobody in this era is going to do that. But everybody who had someone, a parent or grandparent or whatever, they used to pull over and have their little local map.
Nobody's going to pull over on
okay,
285.
So I'm saying all this to say, wait, what? How are you saying, Georgia, that we should not be distracted with these cell phones, but I can go and play around on my dashboard screen and be doing different functions at the same time, I'm making sure that I don't go over the lines on the road and make sure I don't have a fender bender. It's ludicrous. This law is baloney because it's supposed to take away all distraction, but they said some distraction is okay. So how are you going to say that? So now, okay, there won't be an accident or a death because I was on the cell phone, but it'll now be because I was just trying to put on my new Drake song.
Okay, so on that note, all right, Sophie had to do the research on this. So read to me, what is the law? Because I'm looking at it, you sent me. So what is the actual law?
Oh, so the law says that it's illegal. The law says it's illegal to touch mobile devices while driving. Voice commands should be used, and emergency calls are not protected under this law. So you're able to use like a headphone, or you can use the Bluetooth in order to communicate with these people. And it does also include in-car navigation, communication, and entertainment systems. And something that I found that was very interesting that they said, it says as long as someone is legally parked, they're allowed to do those things. But legally parked, quote unquote, does not mean that you're at a stoplight or you're in traffic. Like you actually have to pull over to use your phone.
Hence me talking about the map on the side.
But law enforcement and emergency, they are still allowed to use their phone.
All right, now in your article, you have at the bottom first-time offenders, and read that.
Yeah, so first-time offenders, if you are caught doing that, first-time offenders, you get 1 point on your license, and you get a $50 fine. The second offense is 2 points, and $100 is third, and that's 3 points, and it's $150. So they said for like the first couple of months, they're just going to be educating people and give them a written warrant that they're not allowed to do that. But after that, it will be in effect. And if they want to pull you over, they will pull you over.
Well, that's not bad because somebody told me, which I didn't read this, which thank God for the research team. Somebody told me it was going to be as bad as Super Speeder. That's not as bad as Super Speeder. Super Speeder is expensive as crap because I think I got it one time and that thing was like $280-something. It's a lot. Super Speeder is a lot. The point thing is terrible because I think people don't realize how bad the point thing is, especially when it pertains to your insurance. But the financial fines, nobody wants to pay money for tickets. But I thought it was going to be worse. I actually thought it was going to be worse. But statistically, apparently 1,549 people died on Georgia's roads in 2017. That number could decrease by almost 250 per year, and I'm assuming that's the ideology behind the law.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And they also say
what
it's
happened?
one of the reasons why people, deaths are caused while you're on the road in Georgia.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm a guilty party of moving around and doing things on my phone and doing stuff like that. And I know that it's wrong. But they're passing the law saying it's okay. Now that's to do other things when you're on screen and different things in your cars. And so back to the technology again, they want us to have all the gadgets and be able to access them and have our fun too. But at the same time, are we trying to save these lives that are happening because we're distracted? I mean, everybody has seen people going down the road and they're so engaged in their conversation. I don't think for a moment, especially if they now can be having their hands touching on stuff. I really don't think that was the way to go. If they were going to go with we're being distracted, you have to eliminate all of them. You can't say, okay, well, that distraction is the one we're trying to eliminate, but you can have that one. Both of them are going to kill somebody, and both of them are going to have somebody banging into the back of your car somewhere. So I believe this law, I don't know who did this. I don't know if they didn't take the medication, but this is wrong. Because they're saying that they're allowing a distraction. And they said they were against it. They said this law is supposed to eliminate you having cell phone distraction, but if you're doing it on your new technology, it's okay.
Okay, so all right. So on that note, all right. So everybody knows I have a warped way of looking at stuff because I'm extremely analytical, and it comes from
warped. You never.
It comes from my background, education, and just academic and just experience wise. So let me tell you what I see when I read this law. What I see is lobbyists, because think about what this does. So The only distraction you're allowed is in your navigational or in your console, entertainment console. Well, none of the older cars are going to have that entertainment console.
Exactly.
Only the newer cars are going to have the entertainment console. So what does that mean? People are going to probably start feeling like, I need to go buy a new car because the only way I can do this is to have entertainment
Economics.
console in my car. So now I'm like, okay, I don't want to get a ticket. So I had never thought about getting a new car, but now to avoid getting tickets because I know I use my phone a lot,
Yes.
I need to probably update my car. So what does that mean?
It sounds like a hidden agenda.
I keep trying to explain to people.
Some of them car dealerships is saying.
I keep trying to explain to people.
Now they're in business.
It's a political game because now the lobbyists who lobby on behalf of car dealers and stuff of that magnitude were able to get into somebody's ear to get this bill on the floor and to get it passed. And it was somebody said, you know what? If you do this, we'll put some money in your campaign, or you got a bill. We know you need some money for that bill, so we'll toss some money your way if you can get this bill passed. So here we are.
Yeah.
So again, people who use their phone a lot, who had never thought about getting a new car, are like, you know what? I know I use my phone a lot, and the only thing I can get away with is having an entertainment console. Let me go check out this 2017 car over here at this lot. Now, the offset is watch the radio shows. Watch your TV shows. I will put money. You're going to see an increase in car commercials. Leasing cars, finance companies.
True.
You're going to start seeing an uptick in all these kinds of commercials because now everybody from that industry is going to capitalize on this rule. And I didn't think about it until you brought up that point about the only thing you're allowed is an entertainment console.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that's all new cars.
In the new cars.
Those are all new cars. Because I have a 2015 and I don't have an entertainment console. I have Bluetooth, but I don't have an entertainment console.
You better
This
listen
is
to the
why
same radio
lobbying is
station.
so important. This is why lobbying is so important, and we had talked about it last week when I was talking the wait what from last week with Amazon having like one of the largest lobbying pushes going on. You know, they have a lot of organizations doing that, and they're pushing for their own good, for their own, the future of their business. And so somebody lobbied very hard to get this because on the other side of this, we can instantly see, you could be 8 years old and know that there's not one distraction that's better than another. That's like, I'm going to take one less, this other drug is still going to make me cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but I'm not going to take that one. Okay, it's a drug. I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be. But this, as Ricardo brought up, that there's something on an economic level where this could really play out. There's going to be a lot of people on those lots now with this law saying, "Hey, I got to upgrade that old Cadillac and that old pickup truck that Pop gave me. I got to get out here and get one of the modern cars so I can, get my talk on and get my music on like I want." Because I used to touch my phone a lot while I'm driving, and now if it's seen in my hand, I could get pulled over, I can get a ticket and stuff like that. So that angle is a big reason
But
I think
I
might
keep
be.
trying to explain to
Yeah.
people, politics is where the power is. So again, some lobbyist who was lobbying on behalf of car dealerships got into somebody's ear and said, if you can get this to the floor and get this passed, we'll look out for you. Those backroom deals people think that don't happen, they happen a lot. And like I said, with this particular one, it's just funny to me because it's kind of overt to those of us that know how legislation happens, but it wouldn't be to the average man. It would annoy the average man.
Yeah.
But those of us that understand the language, immediately I said, somebody got this bill to the floor.
I need a new car.
Somebody got this bill to the floor because if that was the case, you wouldn't be able to use anything. So
Right.
the mere fact that the
Exactly.
exception was,
Exactly.
well, if you have an entertainment console, you're good. Really? So that's the one exception is
Yeah.
an entertainment console. That's just funny that happens to be in all newer model cars.
Yes.
Well, there are going to be some people out there that is going to try to challenge it because at the end of the day, they're just thinking about self, and it's also a form of control. So
True. And the fact that there are studies still saying that that's still a distraction to be using your, all of your navigation and trying to play your music and different things. that those studies are out there also from some of the big organizations that study accidents and people who are, breaking speeding laws and all that. So, like you said, I think in the future, there's going to be somebody lobbying to even get that out of there. But in the meantime, I'm going to the lot and look for a new car. I need some of these updates.
Well, before you do that, I need you to look for a new phone. For those that do not know, Wyatt's phone.
Don't you start.
I'm almost ready to ban him from doing Facebook Live because the digital quality of his phone, it's almost a flip phone. Terrible.
I'm getting rid of it.
So I'm going to need you to get a new phone.
this week.
Especially since you're in radio and you have to use a lot of social
Gotcha.
media. Yeah, your phone is not going to handle that. So I'm going to need you to handle that.
It's going to blow up.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to handle that.
See, that new law is making a lot of changes.
We need to make a cell phone law because you right there, that's
cell
Thank
phone
you,
law.
Ricardo.
a cell phone law.
He's a
All
good
right,
mentor.
so we only have about 9 minutes, and I have been dancing around a subject for 2 weeks because we just couldn't get to it. But since Sophie's here today, we have an airport debacle on our hands. So 2 things. One, I just discovered this weekend that there was possibly going to be another airport in Georgia, in Atlanta. I think it's in Paulding County. Paulding County apparently was trying to petition, and apparently they submitted the paperwork to actually have an airport. But Sophie can explain more about that. So I'll give her a minute. That was the thing. Now before that, the issue, and I guess it's not really an issue. They're still talking about it. Was the fact that for those that do not know, Hartford-Jackson Airport is run by the city. I think it's the city. But they're thinking about letting the
The state run it?
Yeah, they're thinking about letting the state run it. So right now the city runs the airport, which is funny to me that a city can run one of the largest airports in the world. But currently in this state, the city runs Hartford-Jackson. Now there are talks about letting the state take over and run Hartford-Jackson. And I think when the state takes over, they want to create a separate funding to operate it. That's not, a part of that city's budget. Ironic to me when you're talking about the largest airport almost in the country, that the city runs it and not the state. This is not uncommon because apparently they had this same conversation, I believe, in North Carolina. And what they did was they hired a third-party contractor to come in and evaluate what would be in the best interest of the airport in North Carolina. The independent contractor evaluated, and he came back and said it was fine in its current state, but it might be a little better to let the state run it. Now, in Georgia, the issue was a lot of corruption. Remember, when you're talking about things like airports and really big infrastructure, stuff like that, you get involved with a lot of contractors because they're not going to, you don't have to do certain things, but certain times of year or certain numbers of years, like, and I'm just throwing off the top of my head, I'm not by any stretch an airport expert, but there are certain things you don't do every day. So because you don't do them every day, you're not going to have them on staff. So that's when you hire what is called an independent contractor, which is somebody who specializes in something that you can contract them to do what their specialization is in. So let's say airplane aviation evaluation. That's not something they probably do every day, so they don't have them on staff. So they would hire an independent contractor to come in to do that job, that particular job. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because what happens is in this case, the city will put up something, say, hey, we need a aviation individual to check the planes. We're taking bids. So they will solicit bids from aviation companies to come in to do this particular job. Now, corruption comes in because the city's over it, they're the only ones that sees these bids that are coming in. So what happens is friends of people who may have this kind of business go, hey, man, I see y'all had a posting for this business. Look, I'm trying to get that contract, man. Look, if I slide you, blah, 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 can you get my contract in the top 3? Mm-hmm. This is where corruption comes in. So some of that apparently has been going on, but we can get a little bit more about that. So, Sophie, what you got?
Okay, so as you stated, Paulding County has been trying to attract airline service for many years, but people that live in Atlanta, as far as residents, have challenged it because of the noises and the traffic that it could cause. And because Portland County didn't hold up their end of submitting the information, the FAA has agreed that they're going to just terminate their involvement in the service, and that Portland Airport will remain an aviation facility.
So what, they can just, they're not an airport, but they can facilitate planes and stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know they did that. Okay. So the topic with Hartford Jackson got funny because last week the Delta CEO chimed in, and he was talking about the current situation about the state taking over versus the city. So Senator Jones introduced a bill to create a statewide board to manage the airport. So again, it all gets tricky, and I guess the issue is trying to minimize corruption. That's what it all boils down to. Because if the city's over it, I don't think the city has a special aviation board that oversees just the airport. Again, mind you, Hartford Jackson is one of the biggest airports, I want to say in the world. I want to say in the world. I think it's one of the biggest in the world. So you're not talking about a small airport. So the fact that the city is managing, this thing brings in $70 billion, and it's home to almost 63,000 jobs. So the mere ideology that the city is managing that is absolutely crazy to me. I didn't even know that was the case. I thought by sure the state was managing this airport. It's not the state, it's the city. So, what do you guys think? Because again, the objective is to minimize corruption. And when you don't have a huge system of checks and balances to leverage and to keep an eye on something an infrastructure this big, corruption is sure to abound.
I think it might need to. It's the largest in the world and the most busy in the world. And I think if there is, all of that, some of those things going on those local levels that have been discovered, because then someone might be doing things more on the mom and pop level of how to do business versus make it a corporate thing of a state running, or a state at least overseeing what's going on, at least really have their hands in it by taking it over. And still you're going to need a lot of city services because it's in the city. It's in Metro Atlanta. So it's going to require, it still should have the same amount of employment and different things, but have more of a objective or not localized governing body that will oversee the operations to make sure that more things come to light than probably will come to light just in the city.
Well, okay, so at its core, these are some of the things that I feel like have really sparked this conversation. And in true form to fashion, guess who's at the core of a lot of this stuff? Mayor Kasim Reed. So, the former head of the Atlanta airport, was fired by Kasim Reed 2 weeks ago, and has hired a law firm known for wrongful termination suits and whistleblower cases. The letter says that Southwell was told his dismissal was due to recent long lines in the airport, but it suggests the mayor's office wanted more control over contracts to be awarded during an upcoming wave of construction and remodeling projects. Now, the funny part is the Atlanta airport is embarking on a massive $6 billion expansion and renovation. Some of the contracts have been held up over disagreements on terms and timing. What does that sound like? And there it is. And there it is. So, again, when you talk about this city, and mind you, the city has been doing this for a number of years. So it's not like the city just took over. They've been doing this since the early 1920s. That's a long time. And again, when you start talking about time, and especially where we are now and how fast thing changes, the city running the airport back in the 1920s probably was a good idea. But now that Hartford Jackson is one of the largest airports in the country, or in the world almost in essence, I really can't say it's a great idea to have the city still running it. I think now it may be time for the state to step in to ensure that checks and balances are properly being executed, because without checks and balances, corruption runs amok.
I think it's the largest employer in the whole state, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I would think that this, would be something that requires that level of governing it, because it's not a little small one, just a little, municipal airport that you have all over the United States. It's like your largest industry, and I would think that would, demand that you get that kind of legislation on it, because other than that, then it's getting so big that there's so much room for a lot of pay to play, and boardroom, meeting and making all these behind the doors meeting deals.
You give people the inch to go a mile. I still hold by that philosophy. All right, so we're in our final couple of seconds. So Sophie, you can say a little your little last thoughts, since you said it for the hour. So
yes, my last thoughts are basically a lot of work is going to have to be put in for that to happen. You have to take in the federal laws, the regulations, and the financial obligations that are going to have to happen in order for us to have a transit of airport authority. And the airport is run as a separate fund outside of the city anyway. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, you get to run point on that, so you get to tell us what happens. All right, Wyatt, last thoughts, and you have 30 seconds.
I got you. Well, we brought up the Toys R Us, and they brought up a lot of subjects on staying innovative, staying competitive, and just watching all the trends and not being, fat on the hog and just sitting back and seeing if things will blow over. So just stay on the cutting edge, keep your head in the game, and keep learning.
All right, and my final thought, people, all my business owners, all my wannabe entrepreneurs, take the time to go over 4 things that you create. Your business plan, your marketing plan, your mission statement, and your vision statement. I promise you, if you put the energy into it now, you won't have to worry about it later. So we'll see you next time, same place, same time on the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.
The Leadership Blend.